So right now, I'm reading this book by John Schwab, okay? And it's How to Build Wealth One House at a Time. And he goes into detail about how you can effectively just build wealth by buying just little one house. That's the title of the book, right? So overall, in the book, he has this rule called the 10-10-10 rule. And in this video, I'm going to break it down and tell you in the end if I like it or if I don't like it, if I recommend it or if I don't recommend it. But overall, guys, if you run the rule effectively, it will help you to acquire a lot of real estate and also make a lot of money. The guy is pretty solid. Here's the book right here, and you should read it. It's a good real estate book to actually read. And as always, guys, like this video and top out, also subscribe because it's free and I have a lot more content coming out when it comes to real estate. Now, the first 10 in the 10-10-10 rule is going to stand for you only want to put down 10 or less as a down payment for the property. Now you might be saying, Tommy, wouldn't it be more beneficial if I can put down even a larger down payment? That way I have more equity, I can pay it off faster. Well, the idea behind this rule is your goal is to acquire property, have less money in the deal so you can buy another property, all right? That's the idea. And by the way, whenever you use leverage, it also magnifies your profits and it also magnifies your losses. So that's important to keep in mind. But the idea is if you put down less than 10%, what do you have? You have more money, most likely available to you to buy the next deal. So let's say, for example, you saved up $20,000 to buy real estate. If you put down 20% on a $100,000 property, that's it. You have no more money. If you put down less than 10%, well, you have more money available to you. Now, the rule is to put down less than 10%. The less you put down, even better in this case. So let's say you found a property. This property is selling for $100,000. You're going to put down 5% because you're able to do that with this deal. You're going to basically do an FHA loan, live in it for a year, and then turn it into a rental property. That's possible. That's doable. That's fine. Now, you're only putting down $5,000. Now, usually on average, real estate appreciates by 2 to 5% every single year. So let's say, for example, the property goes from being worth $100,000 to being worth $105,000 on paper. When I say on paper, it means that it's what it's worth, but you haven't sold it, so you can't really capitalize on it whatsoever, right? So that's very important to understand. It's real, but you haven't capitalized it, okay? So as it can go up, it could also go down, and that's why these profits are just on paper. It could be erased at any moment. Now, what would be your total profit if the property goes up by 5%, right? It went from $100,000 to $105,000. Is your total profit just $5,000? The answer is yes, but guess what? Your total profit overall is around 100%. Because why? You just put down 5% of the property, which is $5,000. It went up by $5,000. That's 100% of your money that you basically just made. That's what leverage does. It magnifies your returns. On top of that, let's say you're just able to make $1,000 a year from cash flow from this property, right? It's what you actually make after you get the rent. You subtract all the expenses. You just get to keep $1,000 a year, right? So what's $1,000 as a percentage of what you actually put into the property? Well, the answer is very simple. If you go right now to your calculator, you type in $1,000, you divide it by how much money you put in the deal to calculate basically your ROI, return on investment, right? I put in $5,000 on this deal, and you multiply it by 100. Guess what that gets you? That gets you 20%. You made a 20% profit. Now, if you put down more money, your ROI would be less obvious because you have more in the deal. The less you have in the deal, the more profit you actually make. But it's also, remember, right? When it comes to profit and risk, the higher the risk, the higher the profit. But if you're buying solid properties, it does make sense when you look at it as this long-term perspective of, I want to buy property, put down less than 10%, make sure I'm buying a solid property that can be rented and I can still cash flow. And that's the idea behind it. So the first part is put down less than 10% as a down payment. The less, the better. Now, what is the second 10 in this rule? Well, the second 10 is you want to pay less than 10% interest. Now, this book is obviously a classic because when they wrote it, people used to get interest rates with more than 2 figures, which is very rare in our age, okay? I've seen with my personal eyes rates of 2.5% and 3%. That was a real thing, right? People were getting basically free money when you compare it to inflation. That's kind of crazy and amazing, right? But for the most part, there will be times when interest rates are going to rise. And do not be afraid when you see interest rates of 8%, 9%, 10%, 11%, 12%. That is possible because it has happened in the past, and whatever happened in the past can and most likely will happen in the future too. Now, here's my personal objection on this, okay, guys? Me personally, I make decisions when it comes to real estate or anything out there based on factors that I can control and that actually make sense for me. So if I find a property that can get me, for example, 2% on a loan, the interest rate is not going to make or break my deal, okay? If the property is garbage, whether I get it at 1% or for free, it doesn't make any sense as far as interest rate because the property is still garbage. If I get a very good deal on a property and I'm paying 8% or 10% on it, it is still solid. But the overall rule is here, make sure you pay no more than 10% in interest, okay? That's the idea. So for me personally, interest rates don't make or break my deal. The actual asset does that, okay? So if the deal is solid, I'm going to go ahead and basically capitalize on it because it's a solid deal overall. And the numbers are going to make sense. But if numbers don't make sense at 3%, they're definitely not going to make sense at 10%, okay? So keep that in mind. And on top of that, when it comes to the first part, which is a 10% for down payments, me personally, I wouldn't do that because my overall goal is to put down 50% to 80% of down payment because my goal is to basically pay off the property as fast as possible. By the way, whenever you read a book, don't just put it away because you don't agree with everything the author is saying. The author used his technique to get him to where he got at, okay? He took his risks, he did things his way. You can learn from that, okay? So take the good, leave the things you don't like. Notice I didn't say the bad because the bad is subjective. So in my case, putting down 10% for a property or less than that, and then getting, for example, less than 10% interest rate, that might sound like super attractive for people that want to use leverage, but for me, I would not be able to sleep at night knowing that I owe so much money. So for me personally, it just doesn't make any sense, and it's not the way I would do it, okay? That's the idea. So you take what you take, you leave what you leave, and that's the idea, but you read books objectively to get what you want out of them. Now, the third 10 is going to be, which I love here, you want to get at least a 10% discount on the property. Now, when I first started looking into real estate and I bought my first property, there's a few things you don't want to be when you're buying property. You don't want to be in a rush. And on top of that, you don't want to be, for example, desperate. You know, in a rush where you're saying, I need to move in 10 weeks. I got to find a property now. In desperate when you're saying this deal is going to follow the market. I need to make a full offer right now or offer above asking price right now, right? You don't want to do that, okay? You want to go clear-headed, you want to be patient, and you don't want to be in a rush because that puts you in a bad spot, in a bad position. When I bought my first property, I paid $130,000. Asking price was $130,000. What I should have done was basically offered $100,000 or $120,000, okay? And I could have gotten that discount, and the would have actually taken it, okay? But guess what? I was so impatient, I was in a rush, and I was worried the deal was gonna fall through, although I had no reason to think that, okay? But that tends to happen. And when you're gonna go buy a property, you usually think that the asking price is the price, but no, everything is negotiable in this game. So the goal is, when you're investing into real estate, you make your money on the buy. You don't make the money, for example, later on. No, you make it on the buy first. It's the first place you make money. So if a property is worth, let's say, for example, $100,000, you want to pay $90,000 in this case. Now, me personally, I want to look for discounts closer to like 20%. Even less than that, right? So I want to make even more of a discount. So if I can buy a property worth $100,000, I can buy it for $80,000, that's actually great. But sometimes if you have a property that is solid, good location, overall good school system, right? Everything is per the property. Then in reality, if you can get a 10% discount, that's more than fair because the property is most likely, because it is a nice neighborhood, going to appreciate at a faster rate. So the idea is I would like to get 20% discounts, right? But if I find a property in a perfect spot and I can get 10% off, then I will go into it. That's the idea, okay, overall. And I like this so much because it's like, hey, instantly you have $20,000 in equity there. because guess what? You got a discount, or in this case, 10%, $10,000 equity on a $100,000 house. Okay, that's the idea. So I love that, because when you go into real estate, you want to make money on the buy first. But overall, if you put this whole picture together, you'll see why it's so effective. If you're putting down less than 10%, you have more cash available, you have greater returns if you know what you're doing. If you're paying less than 10% in interest, you're basically saving a lot more money in interest, right? That's pretty impressive. On top of it, if you're getting discounts, you're getting equity automatically available to you. So it's a great way, a great rule to acquire a lot of real estate at a much faster pace. But for me personally, I'm not trying to acquire real estate at a much faster pace. I'm trying to acquire one piece of real estate at a time, pay it off, buy the next one, pay it off, buy the next one, pay it off. And if I can pay cash for it, even better. That's my overall idea. And that's what I actually want to do. But one big takeaway here is basically, I would definitely use the 10% rule for interest rates, and I would definitely use the 10% discount for buying a property. Those two things are effective, but I'm not trying to put down less than 10% for me personally, okay? That's the idea. That's why I say when you're reading a book, take what you take, leave what you leave, but there's always something to learn. Don't just think because you don't agree with the overall idea of the book that you won't find nuggets in there that will actually help you with your goals, because not everyone has the same ideas or the same plan. The only people that have the same plans and ideas of other people are people that usually don't have thoughts of their own. And that's fine when you first get started, because what you really want to do is basically do monkey see, monkey do, and that's fine. If you see a great strategy and you like it and you want to copy it word for word, that's fine. If it worked for that person, it'll probably work for you too. But eventually, as you keep growing and growing in knowledge and you know what you value, you'll eventually start to customize it. So be willing to customize things to fit you a lot better. So for me, being risk averse and not trying to go into a lot of risks and be worried about owing a lot of money, the 10% down payments doesn't make sense. But if you're into that and you can sleep at night, that's fine. Like my friend, he does that and he does just fine and he's doing great, okay? So there are different paths here. So make the one and do the one that actually makes the most sense for you. All right, that's it for this video. Comment down below dollar. So I know you made it all the way to the end of the video. And this way, everyone in the comments is saying like, why are people commenting down below dollar? Is he giving away $1 or something like that? But yeah, if you made it all the way to the end, comment down below dollar. On top of that, up here is another video. Over here is my face. Subscribe, and as always, long-term team officially out.